We'd like to begin this podcast by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, the Whadjuk Noongar people, and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging.
This episode of Talking Couch Potatoes is brought to you by Henry Houndwear, the brand that all the best dressed hounds are wearing. To find yours, go to henryhoundwear.com.au.
Hey Mel, how are you?
Matt, I'm well. How are you?
I'm not bad. I'm just slowly getting into the swing of 2026.
I know, right?
Yeah.
February already.
Screaming by, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's racing by like a hound after a... No.
No.
We'll do that one, will we? It's racing by like the race toward the end of greyhound racing, which we're picking up the pace on, aren't we, Mel?
Yes, we are.
Yeah. I'm very excited about a couple of things that I want to chat with you about before we have a chat to our guest today. By the way, welcome everyone who's listening. I always forget about our listeners when I'm with you, Mel. I'm captivated by the Maleficent.
Oh, God.
Episode 59 it is, folks, and we've got a couple of new countries on board, Mel, I might want to mention. It's nice that people around the world really care about greyhounds.
Really? Who?
Turkey. Turkey are on board. And would you believe the People's Republic of China?
Oh, wow.
There's
Okay.
people in China having a listen. And we know that they've got a bit of a troubled history with greyhound racing, haven't they?
Yes, well,
China.
I believe one Australian dog is still under investigation that has landed there
Really?
late 2025. Yep, even after the investigation and the inquiry into
Right.
it.
Well, if you're one of our listeners in China, see what you can do over there. Sort them out, would you? Besides that, also in Australia, we've got listeners Australia-wide, and I know there's something huge happening in Sydney coming up soon, Mel. Very big in the animal rights, animal advocacy, animal welfare, animal protection sphere. What is it, Mel?
It's the Animal Rights Forum, February 21st and 22nd.
Yep. And Free the Hounds have got a presence there, haven't they, Mel? They've got a very personal presence.
I'm going to be there, and so is Gemma.
Yay.
Yeah.
Awesome. I sadly won't be there. Somebody's going to stay at home and look after the babies.
Babies, yep.
All right. But what's the plan? What do you got? What's on the agenda?
Well, for Free the Hounds, we will have a stall there, and we'll be talking to people that come and want to know more about what we do here in WA toward greyhound welfare and advocacy.
Yep.
But I'm speaking on a panel called Greyhounds Unleashed.
Yep.
And we have lots of people that we've had on our podcast so far. So Fran from Tasmania,
Yep,
that
hi,
we've
Fran.
spoken to.
Yeah, hi,
Lovely
Fran.
Fran. Elliot Fox, yeah.
Probably the only artist we've had on the podcast. Hi, Elliot.
That's right. Amy from CPG,
Amy's lovely.
the current president there, yes, so who we've interviewed before. There's also Lisa, and she's coming from a background of greyhound rehoming in New South Wales.
Yep.
And then there's Kerry from Grey 2K USA worldwide.
Have we spoken to Kerry?
Gemma did at the last forum in 2024, and he had a few things to say, but we will be having him on the podcast. Yeah. And so, it's a way of trying to share with animal advocates the importance of coming together and ending greyhound racing. Because there is so many of us, if we work together.
Strength in numbers.
While we might have different things that we might focus on, if we can come together for each major push, I think we could be a lot stronger.
Come at it from all angles.
Yeah. And of note too, and presenting separately on his own, will be Professor Andrew Knight, who we have had 2 episodes of our podcast.
We had to stretch it into 2 because
That's
he had so much to say and he knew so much that we had to do a double whammy for Andrew Knight. And I think go back to episode 6 and 7 if you want to hear about Andrew Knight. Anything else going on in terms of...
we are holding our breath waiting for Parliament to resume and see where we go, what the next steps are for the inquiry and also for the study into the economic viability of racing in WA.
Yeah. And as we mentioned in the last one, over 5,000. I want to underline that again. I wonder whether the pros must be a little bit shaken by that there's that many people in WA who want to take the time to put a submission in.
Yeah, and I agree with 5,000 being a fantastic number. But even if a third of those are pro racing that want to continue, then at least it shows how many people are concerned about it and want it to be something that the government really looks at.
Yeah,
so
right.
while, yes, I hope that it was going to be a controlled phase out, and that is what we would obviously like to see, but either way, I think greyhounds and the welfare of greyhounds will improve because of this.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what side you sit on. if that is the outcome, then that is a good thing,
Yeah.
and we should all be happy about that.
That's a really good point, actually, Mel. I try to avoid it, but I often fall into this really black and white idea of it's just got to end and that's it. But actually, I don't know who it was who we spoke to on the podcast just recently around advocacy and how you maintain your spirit and your sort of energy and don't get burnt out. We're saying you've got to count the small wins.
Yeah. Anita.
Anita, and I really took that on board. And one of the small wins is even getting the inquiry.
100%.
Another big win is getting that many submissions. And as you're speaking about, it may be the end of greyhound racing, but it may be this significant shift forward in welfare for animals.
That's right.
Yeah.
And having it on record is something that we haven't had before. And when you've got it on record, nobody can say, oh, we didn't know or we weren't aware. And right now that is a line everybody can use.
I'm just falling into black and white again a little bit, though. I'm so looking forward to having the light shone, because I think people are going to be quite shocked, actually, at what actually goes on. Because this industry, in quotes, has not been transparent and open. In fact, they've obfuscated or misdirected as much as they can sometimes. So now they can't. So I'm super keen to see.
That's right. It's on record.
Yeah.
And nobody can say that they didn't know.
Awesome. Let's keep holding our breath.
Well, yeah, we might all drop off the perch doing that, but yes.
We're going to do something new, Mel, aren't we? We've had a spark of inspiration, given that this podcast is all about the hounds.
That's right. So we're going to have a new segment starting next episode, and that will be the Foster of the Fortnight. So we're starting with Greyhound Adoptions WA and asking them to give us some details of a foster houndie that's looking for a home, and we will let you know a little bit about them.
Yeah.
And of course, as we always try to be, if there are any trainers or racing participants that would like to have details of their dogs shared, while we do not agree at all with what they do, we would never want a dog to miss out on a home. So if there's anybody that wants their dog,
get in touch.
We are more than happy to share any greyhound.
Of course, it's the hounds that count.
Absolutely.
So get in touch, podcast@freethehounds.com.au, and we can help you find a forever home.
Yep.
Awesome. Anything else going on, Mel?
Nope, that's it. We're looking forward to chatting to our...
Yes, Debbie King, who's with the RSPCA. She's the Animal Welfare Policy Research Officer. Always intriguing to talk to the RSPCA, because sometimes they get a bit of flack now and then, don't they?
A lot,
right?
Unfortunately.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of myths and misconceptions, so I'm really glad Deb's going to take the time to clear some of that up and have a chat to us.
That's right.
See you soon.
Bye.
Mel, it's that time we get to have a chat now. And today, as I mentioned, we've got Debbie King from the RSPCA, Animal Welfare Policy Research Officer. Deb's role is to look at the science of animal welfare to make sure the RSPCA is using the best evidence to guide decisions, campaigns and advocacy. She works with the government and also industry to develop strategies that prevent cruelty, improve welfare standards and help animals across Western Australia. She makes sure that WA's perspective and evidence feeds into the broader positions and policies of RSPCA across Australia. And also, Mel, before joining the RSPCA, Deb worked in racing welfare. That's something we're going to be keen to know something about, focusing on post-racing transition and retirement programs. What better guest could you possibly want on Talking Couch Potatoes? Hey Deb, how you doing?
I'm very well, thank you.
It's lovely to have you here.
It's great to be here.
Hi, Deb. And one thing we did leave off was Deb's got some really cool animals.
The family?
Yeah.
It's the horses.
The horses. Oh, you want to hear about the horses? Oh, dear. How long have you got? I have two horses. I have one, Logan. He is the love of my life. My husband's well aware of that, so don't worry. He's 22 years old now. And he's a culmination of a lifelong dream of mine. Always been that crazy, weird horse kid that used to gallop everywhere. And finally, when I moved to Australia in my 30s, I finally got my own horse, and that was Logan. So he lives the life of Riley now. He's retired. I'm just there to cater to his every whim. And then I have another horse called Duke, and he's a part-bred Clydesdale.
That was the one.
Yes.
Oh, they are beautiful.
He is super, super special. He's black and white with one blue eye. Beautiful. Yeah, and I just take him out. I go to an adult riding club and we just have loads of fun. So yeah, just
dancing and prancing around.
Yeah.
Do you have any other companions?
Yeah, I have two cats, ginger female moggies called Tilly and Monkey. My husband's also ginger, and that's one thing I would say.
She's got a thing
We've
for
got
gingers.
a ginger too.
You can never have enough ginger in your life. So he feels very at home. He doesn't feel outnumbered because he's got the girls on side. Yeah, so that's our little family.
Gorgeous.
Gorgeous family. Now, moving on to, I guess, the primary focus of our meeting today, Deb, is greyhounds and animal welfare in general. Where did your love for animals spring from? And then how did that move you into working with the RSPCA?
I would say I've always had a passion for animals, but as you can probably tell from my accent, I grew up in southeast London, and really the only animals that you see around there are pigeons.
I think it's called southeast.
Yeah, southeast.
Southeast.
Yeah, you've got to get it right.
Yeah. You've been in Australia too long.
Yeah, I have.
Southeast.
I'm turning
What's
posh.
this southeast business?
So I never really got to be around animals that much, and I always wanted to. Always on at my mum and dad to have a rabbit or a guinea pig. And then when I was about 5 or 6, a friend of mine was going to the local riding school for horse riding lessons, and that was just, to me, amazing. So I managed to bribe them into letting me go for riding lessons, but unfortunately it was a little bit short-lived because I had quite a nasty accident when I was 11, fell off a horse and ended up in hospital, and I'm now minus a kidney because of that.
Oh, wow.
But it didn't put me off, so I've still, after that, I was still obsessed with horses. But no, I didn't really think about a career with animals initially. So when I started working, I actually had a very different career trajectory. Yeah. I started out in investment banking and just got to the point where I just thought, I mean, obviously it's one of those things, I think, particularly in London and in banking, the main draw is financial. But that's not something that is going to keep you completely satisfied and really engaged. So I actually went and did a degree at 28, a degree in animal management, which basically focused on all of the kind of aspects that feed into animal welfare. Yeah. And I just absolutely loved it. And from there I was like, yeah, I found my calling. Yeah.
Isn't that's kind of, it is inspirational. There's still hope for those who sort of maybe are stuck in a job that maybe pays well, but you're not paying your soul back for the experience of being on the earth.
Definitely. And I think those skills that I learned in the first 10 years of my career, they have served me so well. I have developed ability to build relationships with people. I have good business skills, so I can look at how organisations work and see how we can leverage relationships and opportunities. And I also, once I graduated, and again, it wasn't an intentional move, I ended up teaching animal care. And that was something that I never thought really I could see in my future. But the college that I worked at had an animal unit with 100 different animals, all different species, from livestock through to reptiles. And I was responsible for looking after all of those animals, but then also teaching the students how to look after those animals and how to ensure their welfare. And that was something that I found particularly rewarding as well, because I think, you know, my passion for animals was what led me into that career. And it was really great to see students that maybe previously had seen themselves as not being particularly academic and not able to achieve in a traditional academic environment. Yeah. And not only that, actually doing something that's really meaningful, looking after those animals, ensuring they have a good life, making sure their needs are met. That's a really meaningful role to fulfill. So that was definitely a bit of a kind of curveball that I wasn't expecting, but again, it's really shaped how I've seen my other roles as I've progressed through my career.
Yeah. And then beyond that, you're probably well aware the RSPCA for some reason cops a bit of flack from all sorts of angles, from the right, from the left, from people who don't give a rat's ass about animal advocacy, to sometimes animal advocates.
Yes.
So I'm curious, what was the genesis of your involvement with RSPCA and what's it been like?
I think I've always had a huge respect for RSPCA, and that goes back not just to living here in Western Australia, but also in the UK, because they're a very big, well-known brand in the UK. And I think what a lot of people don't understand is that they have the very tough job of enforcing animal welfare legislation and how challenging that can be, and the resources that it requires, and also the need to have to operate in a very imperfect system and framework and still try and get those really good outcomes for the animals. Yep. I will never ever forget one of the things that one of my lecturers said to me, and it made me think completely differently about my career in welfare, is that you actually have to work where the animals are. Even if the system isn't perfect, even if that system is something that you don't personally align with and your personal values don't align with, don't ever underestimate the change and the improvement that you can make. And that really stuck with me and made me a lot more open-minded. And again, that's what made me go into a role in animal welfare for post-racing animals.
Yep.
RSPCA for me has always been really up there in terms of what they do, because everything they do is based on science and data. And we're not just pulling out our positions and policies out of thin air. They have to be based on what's already out there. What do we know about this issue? What can we tell about the level of welfare that these animals are experiencing, and how can that be improved?
Yep.
It's that kind of pragmatic, evidence-based approach that always appealed to me.
Yeah. I mentioned now and then I work in the mental health field. I sometimes imagine the equivalency might be we work in therapy, and that's no one's got a problem with that. But then we've got Child Protective Services or CPFS, and they cop a lot. And as you were speaking about, the sort of having to work under a legal framework that can be very tricky, under-resourced. There seems to be a bit of an equivalency there that they're going to cop some stuff, and they're doing the best they can, Child Protective Services.
Yes.
But they're not doing the therapy work. They're doing the legal framework, pragmatic stuff.
Yeah, and I think the one thing I would say, and again, it's very similar to what we deal with at RSPCA WA, is that we are dealing with the systemic and society failures that have already occurred. We didn't cause those. We're there to pick up the pieces and to try and salvage whatever we can for those animals. Brilliant. And again, it's probably the same in those fields. But unfortunately, because the frameworks or the systems that did cause those problems are not very easy to shine a spotlight on, it's generally the organisations that are picking up the pieces that cop the flack.
Spot on. In particular with greyhound racing, the RSPCA's remit is very wide.
Yeah.
You've got animal abuse to problems with homing, all sorts of things, But I imagine you'd have a particular stance on greyhound racing. What's the biggest concerns around that?
Yeah, so our current policy is that we believe that there are inherent issues in the greyhound racing industry, and until those issues are resolved, if they can be resolved, RSPCA is not supportive of greyhound racing. So obviously with the issues, and I'm sure previous guests have highlighted a lot of these issues on your podcast, we're looking at things right from the beginning of the life cycle of racing greyhounds, so breeding. How many dogs are actually bred versus how many of those dogs reach the track versus how many of those dogs can be actually rehomed successfully. How is that breeding controlled? At the moment, we know that breeding is actually incentivised, and the motivation behind that is to fill race cards.
Right.
Is that motivation right? I would argue no. We need to look at how many of those dogs can actually be rehomed, and that should be what guides breeding.
Yeah.
Then you have the issues of greyhounds and the way that they might be kept and the variation in that. So when you look at companion dogs, there's a lot of information out there that says that socialisation is a key aspect to ensuring that a dog can live a happy, healthy life as a pet. The way that greyhounds are raised can be very different from that. And then obviously when they get to the track, you have the inherent risks in greyhound racing. 6 to 8 dogs going round a circular or oval shaped track, and that itself has risks that are very difficult to alleviate when it comes to dogs running into each other, running into barriers, all of those things, and then the subsequent injuries that are caused, because those injuries are definitely not something to be underestimated. So some of the data that I've been looking at in WA around the greyhound racing injuries, at the moment, the on-track deaths, since January 2020, 91% of those injuries have been fractures or multiple fractures.
So real big injuries. This isn't a little scratch you get in the park or muscle tissue sort of thing.
No, they're the dogs that are euthanised on the track. Then you have the dogs that have serious injuries. And again, one of the issues with this is the data is quite difficult to get hold of, and at the moment it's actually a voluntary organisation, the Coalition for Protection of Greyhounds, that are doing an amazing job in collating all of that data nationally.
Yeah, they're awesome.
Yeah.
Amazing people.
Oh, fantastic. The amount of work that's involved.
And you meant the key word there, volunteer.
Yeah.
Like, these people have normal jobs and kids and families, and they're out there working their arse off to make sure that there's someone making this mob accountable.
Exactly, yeah. And I think what people don't realise is to actually gather that data and that information means going and looking at every single stewards report from every single race meet, across every single track, across every single state. And that is a huge amount of manual data to try and collect. But even looking at those injuries, since just November 2024, we've had around 70 serious injuries. So they're injuries that have required more than a 60-day or more stand-down period.
Yep.
And when you look at what those types of injuries are, again, 91% fractures or multiple fractures. But in addition to that, you're looking at things like greyhounds collapsing, serious trauma. So, I think that injuries is a key thing. But also it's the industry structure over here, because unlike other states, we have the body, Racing and Wagering WA, or Racing WA as they go by. They are not only the regulator, but they're also the promoter. So there is that inherent conflict of interest.
It's like the fox looking after the hen house.
Yeah, you would hope that having a regulatory body, they would be separate from promoting an industry, because they're the ones that are there to hold the industry accountable and hold them to a set of standards.
Even if it costs money. So the point is that the independent arbiter doesn't think about the profit loss. But if you're embedded in the financial part,
Yeah, anything that involves animals now has what we call a social licence to operate attached, and that hinges on the welfare of those animals and what are people's perceptions of the welfare of those animals. And unfortunately, when you're seeing the types of injuries that we're seeing regularly on the track, that's going to have a huge impact on the social licence to operate for that industry.
My worry though, Deb, is what I've found, especially having two beautiful houndies of my own, the extraordinary number of people I meet who are completely unaware that this is even going on. So I agree with you that and this is why I'm so thrilled about the inquiry, when it is exposed and people have it in their minds, I think we're going to see people say, hey, what the hell?
Yeah.
But we've got to get it out there, don't we? And this
Absolutely.
so-called industry is not very transparent.
Yeah, and that's another big concern that we have, because to evaluate animal welfare in an industry like greyhound racing, you need access to the data.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I would argue the industry, particularly here in Western Australia, with the way that it's set up, there is that real lack of transparency.
Well, there was a thing, Mel, not long ago, remind me what it was, where the industry was asked specifically, what are the number of dogs required? And they said it was commercially sensitive or something.
That's right. Yeah, the breeding numbers.
Yeah.
What is that magic number that can be successfully bred and rehomed?
Yeah.
They wouldn't release it.
And I think it comes back to your point, Deb, is that the breeding numbers are set at the moment at the front end. How many dogs do we need to fill the tracks?
Exactly.
It's not set for the back end. How many dogs can we sustainably breed? My best guess is that's why they said it was commercially sensitive, because if they revealed the number, they would reveal the huge gap between the number of dogs required to race and the number that are sustainably rehomable.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think the other frustrating thing is there are other jurisdictions, such as Victoria and New South Wales, where they have publicly available databases where you can look up dogs to see what their current status is. We don't have that here. So those dogs that I mentioned that have sustained serious injuries on the track, there's no way of publicly verifying what was the outcome for those dogs. Were they put into a rehabilitation scheme, retired, rehomed? We're only getting the partial picture, which again makes making any kind of defensible argument for the industry very difficult.
Well, hopefully we're going to get the full picture very soon. And part of, I think, what Free the Hounds stand for, which Mel reminded me of earlier, is we'd love an ending. But to address these things you're talking about, the overbreeding, the rehoming crisis, improving welfare, that's all a part of what you're pushing for.
Absolutely. Yep. And anything, I think any step forward has to be a step that is better for greyhounds.
Yeah.
Yeah. Has there been a shift, Deb, do you think, in RSPCA's stance on greyhound racing? Is it evolving?
I think it's not necessarily shifting, but it's definitely evolving, because I think with every piece of research that comes out, every piece of new data that comes out, we're able to build up more and more of a picture. And as I mentioned before, RSPCA is a science-driven organisation. We have to base our policies on the information and the research that's available. Now, the body of research that is now becoming available for greyhound racing is increasing year by year. So when I put together our submission for the inquiry, all of that information is based on scientific research.
Yep.
There's nothing in there that is basically just my opinion or RSPCA's opinion.
Yeah.
It has to be backed up. So I think our position is definitely evolving. The more data and the more information we have, the more we are able to identify and really drill down, okay, what are the key welfare issues that need to be addressed, and how can they be addressed, and can they be addressed?
Yeah, it reminds me again of Mel, and not to diminish the importance of coming from an emotive standpoint. Your heart is speaking, and that's what advocacy groups do, alongside making sure you got your facts straight. RSPCA, to a degree, you've got to put your heart aside.
Absolutely.
Would you agree? And just deal with evidence and facts.
Yes, and I think that's where working with other groups, there's absolutely nothing wrong at coming at an animal welfare issue from an emotional perspective, because I believe that's generally where things start from anyway.
Yeah.
But I think for RSPCA, that is really where our power lies, and that's why we can influence decision makers in certain situations, because everything we do has to be backed by science, data and research.
And that takes time. It takes time to build a case.
Yeah.
Whereas, speaking for myself, I can just look at it and say, what the hell? Oh, there's 29 dogs dead this year. That's all you need to know. Just change it. Whereas you have to build a scientific legal case.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And unfortunately, that does take time. Like you say, and that is one of the most frustrating things about working in animal welfare advocacy, is that things don't happen quickly. Yeah. And I think also, one of the things that we do get regularly criticised for is supposed inaction. But I think people, they can't see what we're doing, and a lot of what we do isn't visible to the public. So of course that does look like inaction, but there's a lot of things that we do behind the scenes when it comes to our inspectorate, when we're doing animal cruelty investigations. Just because we haven't gone in and taken an animal straight away doesn't mean that we are not doing anything.
Yeah. And there's a lot of legislation that you have to work around to make sure that the outcome of the case is in the best interest of the animal, because if you were to rush in there and do something, then you might end up having to give an animal back if it's not, if the steps aren't followed.
Exactly. And that's such a good point. And I'm glad you made that point, because I think that's what people don't realise, is that we might attend an animal and to the general public, that animal looks as though it's in a really bad way. It might have been neglected. It might not be being looked after properly. But at the same time, there may be other factors going on with that individual. We all know at the moment we're living in a cost of living crisis. Getting veterinary care, even just the basics like pet food, can be really challenging for some people, and they may have mental health issues that they're trying to deal with. So there can be so many different factors that are causing that situation. So if we went in there and we just took an animal straight away and we didn't provide any support or direction or help as a first port of call, if it comes to the point where that turns into a prosecution, if we haven't followed the correct protocol, you're absolutely right. That's going to jeopardise the prosecution, and that then means that animal was potentially going to just stay with that owner in the same situation. It is quite frustrating at times, and particularly for our inspectors, because the stuff they see,
I can imagine,
every single day. To me, they're absolute heroes, because I don't know how they go out every single day and see the absolute worst that humanity can do to animals. And they see that day in, day out.
And Ben, your CEO, has been on our podcast before, and I didn't realise that until quite recently your inspectors would go out on their own.
Yeah.
They weren't even in pairs.
No, and I think sometimes the situations that they don't even know what the situations are they're walking into. And it's such a tough job. And I think anyone that works in animal welfare, they go into it because they genuinely care and want to help animals. So it's really tough for them to be able to have to go and see all of those situations. And I've seen some of the images, some of the body cam footage, some of the other footage that's been used in prosecutions, and it is absolutely horrific. But, you know, they're seeing this every single day in a real world situation, and they're working within a framework that means, sometimes they do have to leave an animal in a situation that is less than ideal. And I would like to encourage people to think, what do you think's going through their mind when they leave that situation? They take that home with them. They think about it all evening when they're supposed to be relaxing and spending time with their family. They're not there thinking about that animal and how can they get it into a better situation. And then to cop criticism for that it is frustrating, and I totally understand, because the general public aren't privy to a lot of the stuff that goes on behind the scenes. But I just really hope that this educates people about what does go on with the work that our inspectors do and our motivation behind that, and that is to help animals and to improve animal welfare.
Yeah, and it's very difficult, I know, having worked through or trying to work through the changes for the Animal Welfare Act here in WA. Our government is so slow in bringing in any change. Even with all those recommendations, they've still done nothing on it. And another thing is the size of Western Australia.
Absolutely.
Is so massive that trying to cover it for your inspectors as well.
Yeah, and one thing we have done this year is we've actually created a interactive dashboard that's on our website, and it has geographical mapping, and it shows all of the different types of cruelty investigations that we did. Where did our inspectors go? You can look at all of the different complaints by animal species, by local government area. You can click on the map and have a look, and I think it really does visually show the sheer amount of work that our inspectors do.
Yeah, and that's only one part of what the RSPCA do as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've got the whole other side.
Absolutely. And I think that's another thing that people don't really understand, because as much as we're responding to the situations that animals are put in by society and by individuals, we're also doing a lot of work to try and stop those situations from happening in the first place. A lot of people maybe look at RSPCA WA and say, well, you're just a shelter like all of the others, but we're not. We do so much more than that. So we enforce the Animal Welfare Act, but we also look at, why do these situations occur? Why are animals in these situations? So some of the other activities and programs that we do are things like community action days, where we will identify areas where we might be seeing quite high numbers of, say, like neglect. We'll send out our teams. We have vet nursing students that also help, and we go out and we will provide cat and dog food, we'll provide worming and flea treatment, we'll provide free health checks. All of this is completely free. People just need to come along with their dog and they can get access to all of that free of charge. So we're trying to help people that are doing it tough and want to do the right thing by their animal but maybe can't for a variety of different reasons. We also have a program called Pets in Crisis, which is specifically to help people that are experiencing family domestic violence. So that's a foster care program that's open to people who maybe need a safe place for their pets. The more we're learning about domestic violence, the more we're learning that pets can often be used as a tool of coercion.
Yep.
So if we can get those pets out of that situation, we will provide foster care and will ensure that their pets have a safe place whilst they're trying to extricate themselves from the situation, keep themselves safe, keep their pets safe. We have education programs where we go out to schools and other community groups where we talk about what we do and we talk about animal welfare. And also part of my role is trying to get the word out there when there are changes. So one of the things that's happened recently is there's been some new standards and guidelines developed for the care, health and welfare of horses in Western Australia. And again, this is something that people maybe don't understand, but standards and guidelines, as much as they're not at the moment legally enforceable, they are the beginning point for legislative change. So in the future, those standards and guidelines can become regulations, and that means that they are then legally enforceable. So a lot of the work I've been doing recently with those is going out to key stakeholders in the equestrian community, getting the word out there. What are these standards and guidelines? What do they mean for horse ownership? Why are they important? And they actually provide a framework of what does good care for horses look like. So it's a document that people can refer to that actually outlines, if you're going to be involved in the care of horses, this is what's expected. And so that's the kind of work that we do, but so much of that, again, is not really out there in the public. And that's why I think we do get a lot of criticism, because people don't really understand the full remit of our work.
Yeah, and I was one of those people when I started down this greyhound journey. The RSPCA was the second group I went to meet with.
Yeah.
And I was blown away. I just couldn't believe the amount of work that you guys do. And I would ask anybody that is in any doubt to have a look at your website, see what you do, and try to better understand what goes on. And then also have a look at the Animal Welfare Act to see what you have to work against.
Yeah. What the constraints are.
Yeah.
I've learned so much. You know, I had no idea that you're working at the front end in primary prevention, you're working in crisis support, you're working in terms of policy and standards and guidelines development. So if you want to educate yourself, because frankly, with Free the Hounds, we get a lot of pro racers jump on now and then.
Oh, no. It's like almost every post at the moment.
Right.
Is, but what about
what about
RSPCA
whataboutism is one of their biggest things. We call it a Dobie Dick argument. Whataboutism.
Yeah.
Any philosophy student will know that whataboutism is one of the lowest forms of rhetorical debate you can possibly use. But one of the whatabouts is, what about how many dogs RSPCA kill, and why aren't we doing something about that?
Yeah, I think the first thing I will say is that the terminology used is important. So killing is ending a life unnecessarily. Euthanasia is ending suffering when nothing else can. So I think that's the first really important thing to say. And I think the other way that I would explain it is you have to look at the populations of animals that we're dealing with here. RSPCA, we are dealing with animals that have already experienced the very worst that humanity can inflict on them. So we're talking about animals that have had severe neglect, have been abused, beaten, they're traumatised. They often have, as a result of what they've been through, physical issues, mental issues. So unfortunately, we're already dealing with a population of animals that are at a huge disadvantage. When we talk about animals in the racing industry, as we often hear from the racing industry, these animals are provided with the best of care. They should be in, prime condition. So in my mind, the way I would explain it is it's like comparing a hospital and their mortality rate to a gymnasium.
Right.
So we're talking about completely different populations of animals. And I think, again, coming back to my kind of sciencey brain, that you've got to be comparing like for like.
Of course.
So I think from that perspective, just really, first and foremost, these are the animals that we're comparing. We're comparing animals that have already been through the absolute worst situation versus animals that should be in prime health.
Well, that's literally what they say all the time. We love our dogs, we look after our dogs, they're athletes.
Yeah.
Well, why are athletes in the prime of health dying?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when you look at the ethics behind euthanasia, it's a case of looking, as you said before, very rightly, what were the circumstances that led to that animal being in that position?
Yep.
And I think also when we talk about euthanasia or animals dying on the track, it's often reduced to numbers, statistics, and it really removes the individuals and who these animals actually are. And that's one thing that I really respect about what Free the Hounds does, because a lot of the posts that you put up there are identifying these dogs. It's giving them an identity. Yeah. So just to give you an example, one of the dogs, and this is one animal that makes up our euthanasia statistics. This was a dog that was seized last year from an owner. Her name was Doofus, and she was a 14-year-old American Staffy. The police had already requested that her owner take her to the vet. He refused to do that, so she was then seized by our inspectors and brought into our care. When she came into our care, she had a grapefruit-sized tumour on her mouth, which was basically attached to her jaw. That tumour was oozing, it was putrid. She had rotting teeth. She had advanced arthritis, and she was also in the beginnings of kidney failure. She was a dog that was near the end of her life, that should have been enjoying a retirement where all of her needs were being met, and that wasn't happening. She was a typical old dog, grey around the muzzle, soft, kind eyes. Our vet team spent 2 weeks trying to figure out, can we alleviate the suffering that she's having? Can we remove the tumour? Can we treat her kidney failure? Is there anything we can do? So she was under our care for 12 days. And at that point, we reached the conclusion that unfortunately, the only thing we could do would be to give her a very peaceful and pain-free passing.
And can I just jump in again, Deb? Look at the contrast of the thought and the care that goes into that awful decision that you have to make. And this other mob give RSPCA a hard time. We had a vet, sorry, I'm getting hepped up here. We had a vet nurse who worked on the track who said in her entire years working there, only once did an owner come to pick up the dog.
Yeah.
Once it was killed. That's the level of care they have, you know. And I don't mean to disparage an entire group. You're judged by your actions.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that's the difference between what we do and the fact that what we do when we do euthanize animals, it is to end suffering when we literally have no other option. And I think that's what maybe people, not just the racing community, but the wider community, because it's not just from them that we get criticism about euthanasia, but they just don't understand what it's like when you've invested months and months of time, care, research into trying to improve an animal's situation, where you're coming in every day hoping that animals turn the corner.
Yeah.
You know, just hoping that you'll see some small improvement that tells you, yes, we're on the right track. Yep. And when you don't get that and things continue to deteriorate, and you know in your heart you're heading towards that decision, there is absolutely nothing worse, and that's the worst part of working in animal welfare.
Well, there's another really good point that you made earlier, is that, and I know this anecdotally and experientially, that people who move into this field do it because they give a shit about animals. They really care. No one's joining for status or money or fame.
No,
or,
definitely
do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and then this other mob, this thing exists because there's bucks to be made. So the gall that they have to criticise people who are only here out of the goodness and care in their heart for animals, it just boggles my brain.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I can hand on heart say every single person, every single one of my colleagues that I work with at RSPCA is there because they just want the best for animals. And unfortunately, part of the reason people leave this profession and this industry is because of the criticism, and sometimes it does just get too much.
Especially if you're facing up to every day, bearing witness, bearing the vicarious trauma that you have to bear to be there for animals. Yeah. And then you've got a bunch of wankers telling you that you're doing the wrong thing. It must rub salt into the...
Yeah, it does a bit, definitely. But I think what keeps us going are the small wins. Yeah. And I shouldn't say small because they're not small. When we actually have an animal that comes into our care and it is literally at death's door, and we are able to rehabilitate that animal, get it back to full health, and we see it going into a loving home. And we love seeing the stories from people that have adopted animals from us. Doesn't matter if it was 10 years ago. Yeah. We want to hear how that animal's doing.
That's what you live for, right? That's the ultimate result.
My Ginger's from you guys.
Yeah, I know.
And he's amazing. Yeah. He's just divine.
Yeah.
I cannot. I don't have words.
It's because he's ginger.
I know.
Gingers are the best.
I think yes.
Yeah. No, I'm, again, working in the mental health community where really I know people who move into mental health, they do it because they want to support and help the most vulnerable in our community. And when I see a kid who's got a better sense of self, who's maybe not hurting themselves anymore or whatever, or moving into accepting positive relationships with other people, that's it. That's the whole deal.
Exactly. Yeah. That's what keeps you getting out of bed every morning.
Yep, 100%. Deb, what can our supporters do? What can our listeners, Free the Hound supporters, just anyone in WA who give a rat's ass about animals, what are you most in need of? How can we support the RSPCA best?
There's so many different ways you can support us, and it doesn't necessarily mean financial donation, although they're always greatly received. You can have a look on our website, as Mel said, familiarise yourself with the programs that we have, share information. We put a lot of educational information out there. We're actually going to be doing a campaign that's going to be launching in the next couple of weeks about trying to encourage people to leave their dogs at home when they go out and it's hot. Don't leave them in the car. Please share those messages, share information, educate yourself. As Mel said, just take that time to have a read up and really look at the information that's available.
Yep.
And spread the word about what we do. And obviously, if you do see incidences of cruelty, please don't hesitate to report it to us, even though, again, people think that we don't do anything. We do investigate.
You just do it thoughtfully and
exactly.
carefully.
Yeah, so last year we did just over 7,000 animal cruelty investigations. So
Wow.
we do look into that, and it just... every little thing that people can do to help us really goes a long way. And I think that's what people don't realise, that a small donation, $5, it still makes a difference.
Yeah.
Because the inspectorate gets covered by funding from the government, is that right? Or a portion of it does?
Yeah, so we recently, only last year, became fully funded for the inspectorate.
Yeah.
So up until then, we were having to subsidise the cost of the inspectorate, and some of the costs now also of the animals that come into the shelter through the inspectorate is now covered.
Oh,
Yeah.
praise the Lord.
I know, right?
But
Considering so much money goes to the greyhound
Right.
racing industry.
Right.
every single other aspect of our work, we rely
Self-funded.
completely on donations.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
taking in animals
Yeah.
that are dumped or have to be given up, or
Yeah.
and all your domestic violence work. All
Yeah.
of that is funded by
Everything.
donation.
Yeah.
And just so our listeners understand
Yeah.
that, because
Yeah.
people often, I think, misconstrue that as well, that everything is just dumped into one bucket and you just feed from it.
Yeah, we
Correct.
have very strict reporting
Governance, yeah.
guidelines and what we have to meet and show where that money's going that we do get from the government, and that is just purely for the inspectors to
Yep.
be out there on the road
Yep.
and then, taking action.
Yep.
So if you're an animal lover, and I assume that everyone who listens to this is an animal lover in some form or another, put your money where your mouth is if you can and chuck a couple of bucks RSPCA's way. The big one that stood out to me, though, was the educate and inform yourself and then and spread the word. So just get educated.
Yeah,
You know,
there's loads of really good resources on our website.
Yeah.
As I said, we've got the interactive dashboard on there, so you can have a look at the work that our inspectors did last year. You can have a look at our annual report. You can have a look at all of the different advocacy focuses that we have at the moment. There's lots and lots of information. And again, if you still have questions, contact us.
Yeah,
We're always happy to answer people's questions.
yeah.
And I think that's the other thing. People are so quick to get online and criticise as opposed to asking the question.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping that, because we know we've got a bunch of fans that listen, but also a bunch of pro racers that secretly listen. I hope this has been informative to them. Before you jump on and attack people, have an understanding of where does your heart lie. And I think we've heard today, and we've heard from Ben before,
Yep.
that people who work in the animal field, you can call them bleeding hearts, but their hearts lie for the animals. There's no money in animal advocacy.
No.
There's
Yeah.
nothing in it for you personally. It's really all about the animals. So just hold that in mind whenever you want to sling some mud around.
Yep.
What do you
Yep.
reckon?
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people feel that it's the animals that you get in that need rehoming, or that you go and euthanize them all rather than try to rehome them.
Yeah,
Which
and there's that,
it
and that
is
just is completely
wrong.
The opposite of the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the opposite to what any of us would even want as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
I know, and I think I spoke about this, or I have before, but one ginger cat, we were adamant my daughter wanted a ginger because her boyfriend is a ginger.
She's got great taste.
And so we were looking for a ginger, and you had a ginger, but he had ringworm. And the care and attention, he was on his own because of, how contagious it is. But he had a TV, he had this big cage, and the TV had like hawks and things flying on it. We had to wash our shoes. We had to make sure we'd washed our hands, and we had to put gloves on. And I couldn't believe
the level
it.
of thought and care.
I couldn't believe
Yeah.
it for this one tiny
Yeah.
little kitten.
And as coincidence would have it, Mel's daughter's boyfriend got ringworm, and they had to
He
they
did
had
not.
to be separated for quite some time. On that note, I think we'll wrap it up, Mel. Is there anything else you want to let us know before we go, Deb?
No, just thanks so much for giving me the opportunity to come and talk about what we do at RSPCA WA, and hopefully we'll get some support from your listeners.
Yeah, 100%. And thank you again for being a thoughtful, considered, intelligent expression of a viewpoint, which is, if I get that once from the pro racers, I'll tell you what, I'll jump right on board. If I can hear... no, jump on board with a conversation.
Oh, yes, sorry.
I
was like about to shirt front you.
Yeah, thanks, Deb. You're awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Mel, yet again, because this podcast, you and I and Free the Hounds take the time to listen to well-informed, educated people. Yet again, we get a well-informed, educated viewpoint on something. And I really hope, Mel, that some of the pros out there listening will open their ears and their minds and their heart and, I don't know, at least take on a little bit of truth. Like, you can't keep coming at things with nothing but BS, can you, Mel?
You can't, Matthew. I know. I really wish they would listen.
Now, we will try and hold our dignity, as we always do, and I urge our listeners, whenever you interact with those who have differing viewpoints, engage respectfully, engage with integrity, engage with facts and knowledge, and as Deb said, educate and inform yourself. That's the best way to bring people to the fold. Not by denigrating and demonising them, but by opening a conversation.
That can be fun, though.
It can be fun now and then.
When you're in a particular mood.
When you're in a particular mood, yeah, you want to
sometimes
sling
you just
a bit
need
of
to.
mud.
Yeah.
Just sling it gently. Don't hit them in the eye.
No.
Yeah. So anyway, that's it. Keep listening. Keep educating yourself. Keep informing yourself. Keep conversing. And one day we shall, Mel, release the hounds.